So, more about the microbiome. It turns out to be enormously relevant for understanding a bunch of human diseases.
That's right.
What are some of them?
So there's been a long laundry list of conditions that have been linked to changes in the microbiomes, everything from obesity, diabetes, both type 1 and type 2, inflammatory bowel disorder, irritable bowel syndrome, let's say asthma, allergies, anxiety, depression, mental illnesses. So lots of conditions across the board. Colorectal cancer, heart disease. All of these things have been linked to changes in the microbiome. I think the main question for the field, a question that a lot of scientists are wrestling with, is are these changes the cause of these disorders? Are they just a consequence thereof? Is it both? Is it neither? If the microbes are actually having a causal influence, are they instigating these conditions or just exacerbating them? And I think these are the big questions, and we have some hinted answers, but it's still something that's driving the field forward.
So what's the single best example of an area where understanding the microbiome gives us clinical leverage?
You could make an argument for lots of different areas. I like heart disease as a link because it's not something that people think of as to do with microbes.
I was sure you were going to talk about the gut.
I know. I am sort of partly going to talk about the gut. So there are microbes that affect the metabolism of nutrients in our diet, like things like choline and carnitine that are found in large amounts in things like red meat. And they help to break those substances down into an end product called TMAO, which slows the metabolism of cholesterol in the body, allows it to accumulate in arteries, and increases the risk of arterial disease and heart disease. You could potentially drug the microbes that are responsible for that pathway, and not kill them as an antibiotic would, but just stop them from catalyzing that step, from increasing the buildup of TMAO. So I like this idea because it's a way of affecting the microbes that live within us.
Domesticating them so they do good things instead of bad things.
That's right. Yeah, it's just a little nudge. It's not destroying them, but it's saying do this rather than that. And I think you could think of a future where if someone had a high risk of heart disease, their doctor might say give them a statin, which is a drug that targets a human enzyme, but then also another drug that targets the microbial half of them. So you have both parts of that symbiosis being influenced together.
I know a number of scientists who are desperate to get their cholesterol lower, and they hardly eat any fat, and they exercise all the time, and their cholesterol still stays high. It sounds like one other possible explanation, other than genetics, is their microbiome.
Yeah, I mean, that for sure. And I think that's something we need to look at, like to what extent the microbiome is responsible for a lot of these population level variations that are hard to explain through other means.
Now back to heart disease patients again. Some take Digitalis, and apparently Digitalis acts differently depending on your microbiome.
Yeah, so digoxin works in some people and not in others because in about, I think, 10% of people, there's a microbe called Egophila lenta, a particular strain of that microbe that breaks down that drug and inactivates it. So that might be another potential way of using the microbiome for medical purposes that could be sort of worked out in the short term rather than taking many years of research. So maybe using it as a way of stratifying people according to which medicines will work on them.
So personalized medicine based on your microbiome, not
Absolutely.
your genome.
Yep, that's right. Exactly.
Are we ready to start doing people's microbiome and giving them something like 23andMe for their microbiome?
I think there are some organizations that are doing that. I still feel that it's in a very early stage. I think there are a few technical issues that need to get resolved. Sometimes, you can send off a reading in 2 to 3 different labs and get very different results. And I think the big problem, which even 23andMe is still facing, is one of interpretation. Yeah. So you have a microbiome readout. What does that mean for you? And I think at the moment we really don't understand enough about this to actually give people actionable intel, advice that they can act upon. I think we'll get there in the future, but there are still so many unknowns, like we talked about, like what governs the variation in the microbiome, what does a healthy microbiome look like, and then if given your current state, what does that mean for you? And I think it's really hard to pass those results.
So let's go on in just a moment and talk about how many different ways we wreck our microbiome in modern life.